I was sitting in a cold hospital hallway that smelled like bleach and bad news, bouncing my knee like a busted engine that wouldn't shut off. The oncology wing felt like time didn't move right, clocks ticking slow, people whispering like life might break if they talked too loud. My name's Daniel Brooks. I'm 35, grease-stained mechanic from the south side of Chicago, and that morning I was waiting to find out if my lungs were trying to kill me. Yeah, real cheerful stuff. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, so I pulled out my phone and stared at my favorite picture, my daughter Lily. 6 years old. Crazy messy blonde hair. Gap-toothed grin. Hugging that ragged stuffed bear she drags everywhere like it pays rent. She's my whole world. My only world since my wife died 3 years ago in a crash that still messes with my head. Truth is, if the test results came back bad, Lily had nobody. No grandparents. No close family. Just me. And that thought. It hit harder than any diagnosis ever could. My fingers slipped and the phone clattered to the floor. Before I could grab it, a woman beside me picked it up. I hadn't even noticed her sit down. Smooth move, Daniel. She handed the phone back without a smile. Fancy coat, perfect posture, the kind of woman who probably runs companies before breakfast. But when she looked at Lily's picture, something flickered in her eyes, not pity, more like longing. Thanks, I muttered, feeling like a guy who showed up to a black tie party in oil-stained boots. She didn't say much. Just sat there stiff as a statue, staring straight ahead. Her hands were clenched tight enough to crack walnuts though. So yeah, she was scared too. Same storm, different boats. That's when the elevator dinged and everything went sideways. A rich-looking older lady strutted in with a fake smile sharp enough to cut glass. She spotted fancy coat woman immediately and made a beeline like a shark smelling blood. You could tell, this wasn't a friendly hello. This was corporate drama with expensive perfume. She started asking loud questions. Why she was alone, where her husband was, all that fake nice nonsense people use when they're really trying to embarrass you. I watched fancy coat woman freeze. Not weak, just cornered. Like someone had ripped her armor off in public. Then she suddenly stood up, walked straight over, and sat right next to me. Before I could even blink, she grabbed my hand. My husband's right here, she said cool as ice. My brain basically blue-screened. Husband. Lady. I don't even know your last name. But when I looked at her, really looked, I saw it. Fear. Raw, ugly fear. Same kind that had been eating me alive all morning. So instead of pulling away, I played along. I slid closer. Wrapped an arm around her like we'd done this 1,000 times. The rich lady gave me a once-over like I was gum on her shoe, but I just nodded and kept my voice steady. Said I liked staying out of the spotlight. Working with my hands. Supporting my wife behind the scenes. Total improv. Zero rehearsal. Somehow, it worked. When the shark finally swam off, fancy coat woman let go of my hand and whispered, "Thank you. I'm Sarah." "Daniel," I said. Two strangers. One lie. Same damn fear hanging over both our heads. And I had no clue that fake marriage moment was about to flip my entire life upside down. After the whole fake husband stunt, Sarah and I just sat there in awkward silence like two strangers who'd accidentally shared a secret. The hospital hallway buzzed with nurses and rolling carts, but around us it felt weirdly quiet, like the world hit pause. "You waiting on results too?" I finally asked. She nodded, eyes glued to the floor. "Biopsy," she said softly. Just one word, but it carried a ton of weight. Before either of us could say anything else, a nurse popped out and called both our names. Turns out we had the same doctor. Yeah, life's got a twisted sense of humor like that. We walked into the consultation room side by side, pretending not to notice how strange that felt. Dr. Matthews gave us the kind of smile doctors use when they don't have answers yet. Both our tests. Inconclusive. More scans. More waiting. 3 more days stuck in limbo. 3 days wondering if we were about to lose everything. Outside in the parking lot, the sun hit like a slap. I headed toward my rusted-out Ford pickup, already stressing about work and Lily and a million other problems piling up. That's when Sarah stopped me. For the next 3 days. I need you to keep pretending, she said, voice steady but eyes tired. At least at the hospital. I laughed awkwardly. Yeah, that's not really my scene. I'm a mechanic, not some corporate husband for hire. She hesitated, then dropped the bomb. I'll pay you. Or, if your results go bad, I can make sure your daughter is taken care of. Good schools. Safe home. Whatever she needs. Man, that hit me right in the gut. Because every night for weeks I'd been lying awake wondering who'd take care of Lily if I didn't make it. And here was this stranger offering the one thing I couldn't guarantee myself, a safety net for my kid. I stared at my truck keys digging into my palm. Every instinct screamed this was a bad idea. But then Lily's face popped into my head, her messy hair, her laugh, the way she still talks to her mom's picture before bed. 3 days, I said finally. That's it. Sarah nodded like she'd just won a battle she didn't want to fight. Day 1 was straight up awkward. I showed up at the hospital wearing clean jeans and a button-down I barely recognized from the back of my closet. We signed paperwork together like a real couple, insurance forms that needed a spouse's signature. My name looked weird next to hers, like someone else's life. Afterward we sat in the cafeteria. She poked at a salad she didn't eat while I nursed a terrible cup of coffee. Out of nowhere she asked, "Tell me about your daughter." And man, once I started talking about Lily, I couldn't shut up. Her drawings, her goofy jokes, how she sleeps with a star-shaped nightlight because she hates the dark. Sarah listened, really listened, like my words mattered. No phone. No fake nodding. Just quiet attention. For the first time since my wife died, I felt like someone actually saw me. By the end of that day, the fake marriage felt a little less fake. Still weird. Still temporary. But something had shifted, like we were both leaning on each other without meaning to. And honestly, that scared me almost as much as the cancer test. Day 2 of the fake husband deal hit different. The nerves were worse, the waiting heavier, and the lie we were living started feeling way too real. I met Sarah in the hospital lobby early that morning, and before we even said hello, I spotted trouble walking straight toward us, Patricia. Same shark smile. Same expensive shoes that probably cost more than my truck. Without saying a word, I reached for Sarah's hand. Muscle memory at this point. She squeezed back instantly, like we practiced it. We looked like a normal couple waiting for an appointment, casual, comfortable, nothing to see here. Patricia circled us like she was auditioning for a detective show. Asking questions about how we met, where we lived, why I never showed up to corporate events. I kept my answers chill. Said I liked working with my hands, staying low-key, letting my wife shine. Sarah played along perfectly, leaning into me like she trusted me completely. 20 minutes of interrogation later, Patricia finally bailed. But we couldn't risk her catching us acting weird, so Sarah suggested we grab lunch nearby. Yeah, fake marriage date number 1. The restaurant was quiet, one of those half-empty places with indie music playing too soft to recognize. Sarah ordered a fancy salad she barely touched. I got a sandwich and ate it like a guy who forgot what hunger felt like. For a while we just sat there, pretending to be comfortable in the silence. Then she hit me with a question out of nowhere. Are you scared of dying? I set my sandwich down. Took a breath. Terrified, I admitted. But honestly, I'm more scared of Lily growing up alone. Cancer, pain, whatever, that stuff doesn't scare me as much as the thought of her not having anyone. She didn't respond right away. Just stared at the table like my words cracked something open inside her. For the first time since we met, she looked small, not like the untouchable CEO everyone else saw. Just a woman realizing she might be facing everything alone. The rest of the day blurred into appointments and paperwork. We joked a little, shared stories, learned weird random facts about each other, like how she drinks black coffee like a maniac and how I can't cook anything except mac and cheese without setting off smoke alarms. Somewhere between the fake smiles and real conversations, I started forgetting we were pretending. That night I went home and Lily tackled me at the door like always. I helped her with homework, made dinner, tucked her into bed under her star-shaped nightlight. But while she slept, my mind kept drifting back to Sarah. The way she listened. The way she looked when she thought no one was watching, strong but exhausted. Day 3 showed up faster than I expected. The jokes disappeared. The small talk dried up. We both knew this was it, the day we'd find out if our lives were about to flip upside down. Before going into the exam rooms, Sarah turned to me. Her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, for making these 3 days less lonely." I wanted to say something deep, something that sounded like it belonged in a movie. But all I managed was a nod and a tight smile. Then the nurse called my name first. And as I walked toward that door, my heart was pounding so hard I thought the whole hallway could hear it. Because in a few minutes, everything might change forever. The exam room felt smaller than a closet. White walls, bright lights, and that quiet hum of machines that makes your brain go wild with worst-case scenarios. I sat across from Dr. Matthews trying to look tough, but my leg was bouncing like a jackhammer. He flipped through my scans, cleared his throat, and said words I'll never forget. "Daniel, the growth is benign." For a second I just blinked at him like he was speaking another language. "So, not cancer?" I asked. He smiled, real smile this time. "Not cancer. You'll need monitoring, but you're going to be okay." Man, the relief hit me like a freight train. My chest loosened, my eyes burned, and I had to press my hands over my face to keep it together. I was gonna live. I was gonna see Lily grow up. All those nights imagining her alone, gone in one sentence. When I stepped back into the hallway, Sarah was waiting. The second she saw my face, she knew. Her shoulders dropped and she smiled, a real one, warm and soft. "Good news?" she asked. I nodded, still too emotional to talk. She squeezed my arm like she was genuinely happy for me, and then it was her turn. Watching her walk into that room felt heavier than anything I'd faced myself. She kept her chin up like a soldier heading into battle, but I knew she was scared. I sat there staring at the floor tiles, counting seconds, wishing I could trade places with her. 20 minutes later the door opened. She stepped out looking calm, too calm. Her eyes gave it away though, pale, distant, like someone just knocked the air out of her lungs. "Malignant," she whispered. "Stage 1. Early, but still cancer." My brain didn't even think. I just moved. Wrapped her in a hug and grabbed her hand the way she grabbed mine that first day. This time it wasn't fake. No audience. No corporate sharks. Just two people holding on because life hit too damn hard. She squeezed my hand back like it was the only solid thing in the world. Then her phone rang. She answered automatically, voice flat. Her assistant sounded way too cheerful for a hospital hallway. Talking about mergers, board approvals, congratulations, and one line that hit me weird. "The board was impressed by your strong family support system." Family support system. My stomach twisted. Because suddenly everything clicked. The fake husband, the public appearances, the board politics. Maybe this whole thing was never about fear or loneliness. Maybe I was just part of her corporate strategy. I slowly let go of her hand. She noticed immediately. "Daniel, wait." "So the deal went through," I said, voice colder than I meant it to be. "Guess the fake husband did his job." Her eyes widened. "No, it wasn't like that." But my walls were already going up. I felt stupid, used, like a prop in someone else's business war. "I wish you luck with the surgery, Miss Mitchell," I said, forcing distance between us with every word. Then I walked toward the elevator without looking back. The doors closed, and just like that, 3 intense days ended in silence. That night I sat on Lily's bedroom floor watching her sleep under her little star nightlight. Relief filled my chest knowing I was gonna live, but there was this empty feeling too. A weird ache I couldn't shake. Lily woke up half asleep and mumbled, "Daddy, where's the pretty lady from your phone?" I froze. Because somehow, without realizing it, Sarah had become part of our world too. And now, I had no idea if I just walked away from someone who actually needed me. Life went back to normal, at least on the surface. I woke up at 6, packed Lily's lunch, dropped her off at school, and headed to the garage like nothing had happened. Grease under my nails. Country music on the radio. Same busted engines and cranky customers. The routine felt safe, predictable, like armor against thoughts I didn't want to deal with. But nights? Nights were brutal. After Lily fell asleep, I'd sit on the couch staring at a TV that might as well have been blank. My brain kept replaying hospital moments on loop, Sarah's laugh in the cafeteria, the way she listened when I talked about Lily, the look in her eyes when she got her diagnosis. I told myself she used me. Told myself it was a business deal dressed up as something real. But the words felt hollow, like duct tape over a cracked window. One evening Lily came home waving a drawing like she'd just won an award. "Look, Daddy," she shouted, bouncing into the kitchen while I was making mac and cheese, my only culinary talent. The picture showed 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a bright yellow sun. One tall guy, one tiny blonde kid, and one woman with brown hair wearing a blue dress. "Who's this?" I asked, pointing to the woman even though I already knew. "That's your friend from the hospital," Lily said casually. She looked sad, so I drew her happy with us. Man, that hit harder than any diagnosis. I smiled and told Lily it was beautiful, but later that night I sat at the kitchen table staring at that drawing like it was trying to tell me something. My phone sat next to it. Sarah's number still saved. My thumb hovered over the call button for a long time. I didn't press it. Across the city, yeah, I didn't know this yet but I'd find out later, Sarah was preparing for surgery alone. Cold hospital room. Bright lights. Nurses asking if there was anyone they should call for her. There wasn't. And for the first time in years, she cried. Not because she was scared of dying, but because she realized she'd built her whole life alone. Before surgery she wrote a letter, one she asked someone to deliver to me if things went bad. The next morning I heard a knock on my door while making Lily breakfast. A young woman in a business suit handed me an envelope with my name written in elegant handwriting. I knew before opening it. Sarah's words hit me like a punch to the chest. She said she picked me at first because she needed a fake husband, but somewhere along the way I became real to her. She thanked me for seeing her, really seeing her, and told me to tell Lily the pretty lady thought she had the best dad in the world, just in case she didn't make it. My hands started shaking. I called the garage, told them I wouldn't be coming in. Asked our neighbor to watch Lily. Then I jumped in my truck and drove like a maniac toward Northwestern Memorial. Didn't know if I was too late. Didn't know what I'd say. Didn't know if she even wanted to see me. All I knew was that I couldn't let her face surgery alone. Not after everything we'd been through. And not after realizing, maybe the only mistake I made, was walking away too soon. The drive to the hospital felt like a scene out of an action movie, except there was no cool soundtrack, just my heartbeat thumping louder than my engine. Traffic lights felt personal, like they were testing how badly I really wanted to get there. Every second I kept thinking, what if I'm too late? I finally screeched into the parking garage, barely remembering to lock my truck before running inside. The smell of antiseptic hit me the second the automatic doors opened, and my stomach twisted. Memories of those 3 days came rushing back, the fake smiles, the real conversations, the way everything fell apart at the end. At the front desk I blurted out Sarah Mitchell's name like a guy out of breath after a marathon. The nurse glanced at her screen and said she'd just come out of surgery and was in recovery. Relief hit me so hard my knees almost buckled. I found her room a few minutes later. The door was half open. Machines hummed quietly, monitors blinking like tiny city lights. Sarah lay on the bed pale and still, hair spread across the pillow, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. No power suit. No armor. Just a person who went through something brutal. I pulled a chair beside her and sat down. For a second I wasn't sure what to do, what to say, so I just reached out and took her hand. Same way she grabbed mine that first day in the oncology wing. Only this time, it wasn't pretend. No board members. No lies. Just me showing up because I wanted to be there. Time slowed. Nurses came in and out checking monitors, adjusting IVs, whispering updates. I stayed put. Didn't check my phone. Didn't think about work. Just sat there watching her breathe, waiting for her eyes to open. An hour passed. Maybe more, I lost track. Finally she stirred. Eyelids fluttering like she was fighting through fog. When her eyes opened, they landed on me instantly. Confusion crossed her face first, then disbelief. Daniel, her voice came out rough and barely there. Am I dreaming? I shook my head and gave her hand a gentle squeeze. Nope. You're stuck with me. Her eyes filled with tears. Real ones. The kind she probably hadn't let herself cry in years. Why are you here? She whispered. I took a breath because this was the moment that mattered. The moment where fake ended and real began. I'm not here to pretend to be your husband anymore, I said quietly. Her face fell a little, like she expected that answer. I'm here because I want to be someone who stays, I added. For real this time. She stared at me like she wasn't sure whether to believe it. Then her fingers tightened around mine, and for the first time since we met, she let herself relax. No walls. No CEO mask. Just a woman who finally didn't have to face everything alone. We didn't say much after that. Didn't need to. The room felt calmer, lighter, like the storm had finally passed. Sitting there holding her hand, I realized something huge. Somewhere between fake marriage paperwork and late-night conversations about Lily, I'd stopped being a guy helping a stranger. And started being a man who actually cared. The days after Sarah's surgery blurred together in a weird mix of hospital coffee, beeping machines, and conversations that felt way too real for two people who started as strangers. I split my time between the garage, Lily, and sitting beside Sarah's bed cracking terrible jokes she pretended were funny. She looked different, thinner, tired, hair tied back messy instead of perfect, but somehow more real than the sharp CEO I met in that hallway. The walls she used to hide behind. They were slipping. And honestly, I didn't miss them. One afternoon she was staring out the hospital window, quiet for too long. I handed her a juice box from the cafeteria like it was a peace offering. Doctor says you got a drink, I said. Don't argue with the guy who went to school longer than we've been alive. She smirked weakly. You're bossy for a mechanic. Yeah, well, someone's gotta keep you in line, Miss Corporate. That earned me a small laugh, real, not forced. Moments like that made the room feel less like a hospital and more like, I don't know, somewhere safe. Lily came to visit a few days later, dragging her backpack full of drawings like she was delivering masterpieces to a museum. She handed Sarah a colorful picture of three stick figures holding hands under a giant smiling sun. "That's us," Lily said proudly. "So you don't feel lonely?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears instantly. She hugged Lily gently, careful of the four lines. Watching them together messed with my heart in a way I wasn't ready to admit. Because suddenly this weird temporary connection started feeling like something permanent, something real. When Sarah was finally discharged, I helped her settle into her penthouse. Fancy place, glass walls, city views, furniture that probably cost more than my yearly salary, but it felt cold. Too quiet. Like a museum instead of a home. She tried acting tough, insisting she could manage alone. But chemo started soon, and recovery was rough. So I started dropping by after work to check on her. Fixing small things around the apartment, cooking terrible but edible dinners, making sure she actually took her meds instead of pretending she didn't need help. One night while I was making spaghetti that tasted like regret, she leaned against the kitchen counter watching me. "You know, I've spent my whole life proving I didn't need anyone," she said quietly. "Yeah," I replied, stirring the sauce. "And how's that working out for you?" She laughed softly, then got serious. "Those 3 fake days at the hospital, they were the first time I didn't feel alone in years." My chest tightened. Because the truth was, I felt the same way. Weeks passed. Chemo started. Some days she felt strong, cracking jokes and arguing about my terrible cooking. Other days she barely had energy to get out of bed. I stayed anyway, not because of a deal, not because of guilt, but because leaving just didn't feel like an option anymore. One evening we sat on her balcony watching the Chicago skyline glow orange from the sunset. She leaned her head on my shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world. No fake husband act. No pretending. Just two people who met at rock bottom, slowly learning how to stand back up together. And for the first time since my wife died, I caught myself smiling without forcing it. Which scared me, almost as much as losing her would. A couple months into Sarah's treatment, life settled into this weird new rhythm that felt almost normal. Mornings were still chaos with Lily refusing to wear matching socks, afternoons were grease and busted engines at the garage, and evenings usually ended with me stopping by Sarah's place to make sure she ate something besides crackers. Chemo wasn't easy on her. Some days she had energy and sass, bossing me around from the couch like a tiny exhausted CEO. Other days she looked pale and drained, wrapped in a blanket staring at the city lights like she was trying to outstare the universe itself. But she never faced it alone anymore. One Saturday I brought Lily over with a stack of board games and zero warning. Sarah opened the door wearing oversized sweatpants and a hoodie that looked like it swallowed her whole. Lily ran past me yelling, "Pretty lady," like they were old friends. Within minutes the penthouse went from silent and fancy to loud and messy. Candy wrappers on the table, crayons everywhere, laughter echoing off glass walls. Sarah sat on the floor with Lily coloring unicorns like she'd been doing it her whole life. Watching them together felt surreal, like two worlds colliding in the best way possible. Later that night, after Lily fell asleep on the couch mid-movie, Sarah and I sat quietly watching her. "I never imagined my home sounding like this," Sarah said softly. "It used to feel powerful, now it finally feels alive." I nodded. Kids do that. They turn silence into chaos real quick. She glanced at me, serious. "And you brought that chaos here." "Thank you." Those words stuck with me longer than I expected. Days turned into weeks. We built routines, grocery runs together, lazy movie nights, arguing about which pizza place was the best in Chicago. The fake relationship had completely disappeared without us even noticing. Friends at the garage started asking why I smiled more. Lily kept talking about Sarah like she was already family. One afternoon we visited Millennium Park for a walk. The weather was warm, the city buzzing with street performers and tourists. Lily ran ahead chasing pigeons while Sarah and I sat on a bench sharing an ice cream cone like teenagers. You know, Sarah said, leaning back and closing her eyes against the sun, when we met I thought you were just a temporary solution to a business problem. I laughed. Yeah, same here. Thought you were just another rich stranger. She nudged my shoulder gently. Funny how things change. Lily ran back to us, face covered in chocolate. Are you guys gonna kiss or what? She blurted out loud enough for half the park to hear. I nearly choked on my ice cream. Sarah burst into real laughter, the loud, carefree kind I'd never heard from her before. People around us smiled like we were just another happy family enjoying a normal day. And for a moment, it felt exactly like that. Sitting there between them, city noise fading into the background, I realized something big. The fake story we started with had quietly turned into something real, something strong enough to survive hospital rooms and heartbreak. But deep down, a small voice kept whispering that real relationships come with real risks. And I wasn't sure if I was brave enough to admit how much they both meant to me now. Things were good. Too good maybe. Sarah's treatments were working, Lily was basically living at her place half the time, and my life finally felt steady. Which should have made me happy, but instead it made me nervous as hell. Because every time life starts feeling perfect, something usually crashes it. One evening I stopped by Sarah's apartment after work and found her staring at her laptop with that old CEO expression, sharp, focused, walls back up. Papers spread across the table, phone buzzing non-stop. I hadn't seen that version of her in weeks. What's going on? I asked, tossing my jacket over a chair. Board meeting tomorrow, she said without looking up. They want me back full-time once treatment ends. Big expansion deal. Lots of pressure. Her voice sounded different, colder, more distant, and it hit me weird. Like the woman who laughed with Lily over crayons was slowly disappearing behind business armor again. That night I lay awake on her couch while she worked late into the night. Emails. Calls. Strategy talk I didn't understand. And my brain started doing that annoying thing where it imagines worst-case scenarios. What if she went back to that world completely? What if I was just a temporary chapter again, like the fake husband phase? The next day I showed up at the hospital for one of her follow-ups, and guess who was there? Patricia. Same shark smile, same fake politeness. She shook my hand like she barely remembered me. Well, Daniel, still playing house, she said with a smirk that made my stomach twist. Sarah shut her down fast, but the damage was done. Old insecurities came rushing back, the feeling that I didn't belong in her world. That eventually she'd realize a mechanic with grease-stained boots didn't fit beside a CEO in power suits. That night we argued for the first time. Nothing huge. Just little comments that turned sharp real quick. I accused her of slipping back into her old life like we were just a break from reality. She accused me of being scared to grow and accept change. Voices raised. Silence heavy afterward. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Same feeling as that hospital elevator months ago, walls going up, heart shutting down before it could get hurt. Daniel, she said quietly behind me. Not angry anymore, just tired. Are you leaving again before we actually talk? Her words stopped me mid-step. I turned around and saw something I hadn't noticed before, fear. Not corporate fear. Not medical fear. Just the fear of losing someone she cared about. We started as fake, I said honestly. And sometimes I'm scared that's all I am to you, a temporary fix. She walked over slowly and took my hand. You're not temporary, she whispered. You're the first person who stayed when things got hard. And yeah. I'm scared too. Scared you'll walk away every time life gets complicated. The room fell quiet. Instead of leaving, I dropped my keys back on the table. Because for the first time in my life, I realized real love wasn't about avoiding fights or pretending everything was perfect. It was about staying, even when things got messy. And that night, we finally started talking like two people building something real, instead of two strangers pretending it didn't matter. The night we almost broke up turned into the night everything finally got real between us. No fake smiles. No pretending everything was perfect. Just two tired people sitting on opposite sides of the couch, talking through fears we'd both been hiding for months. Sarah admitted she was scared of losing herself again in work, that old version of her who pushed everyone away just to stay strong. I admitted I was terrified of becoming replaceable, like once she fully recovered and went back to boardrooms and power suits, I'd fade into the background like a temporary chapter she didn't need anymore. We talked until sunrise. Ugly truths. Old wounds. Stuff neither of us wanted to admit out loud. And instead of pushing each other away, we actually listened. The next morning felt weirdly lighter. Like we dropped a bunch of emotional weight neither of us realized we were carrying. A few days later Sarah invited me to her company office for the first time. "If you're gonna be part of my life," she said with a smirk, "you should see all sides of it, even the chaotic ones." Man, stepping into that building felt like entering another planet. Glass walls, fancy suits, people walking around with expensive coffee and serious faces. I suddenly became hyper-aware of my worn boots and mechanic jacket. Felt like a grease stain in a world of perfect polish. But Sarah didn't let go of my hand once. She introduced me to her team without hesitation. No awkward pauses. No pretending I was just a friend. "This is Daniel," she said confidently. "He's important to me." Hearing that in front of everyone hit me harder than I expected. Of course. Patricia was there too. Her smile looked fake enough to peel off. She asked questions dripping with subtle judgment, what I did, how long we'd known each other, whether I planned to adapt to Sarah's lifestyle. Normally I'd crack a joke and avoid conflict. But this time I stood my ground. Told her I fixed engines for a living and took care of my family, and I was proud of both. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table like she was cheering me on without saying a word. Walking out of that building later, I didn't feel out of place anymore. I felt like I belonged beside her, not because I fit her world perfectly, but because we chose each other anyway. That weekend we went back to Millennium Park with Lily. Same bench. Same melting ice cream. But something felt different, steadier, stronger, like we weren't just surviving anymore. We were building something real. Lily watched us talk and suddenly said, "You guys don't fight like before." "That's good." Sarah laughed. "We still fight sometimes." "Yeah," I added, wrapping an arm around both of them. "But now we fight for each other, not against each other." Later that night, after Lily fell asleep between us on the couch, Sarah rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I'm done being scared of losing everything. I want to build a future, with you." My heart pounded hearing that. Because for the first time since my wife died, I wasn't just thinking about surviving day by day. I was actually imagining a future again. And honestly, that thought scared me almost as much as it made me happy. Just when life started feeling steady, the past showed up like an uninvited guest who didn't know when to leave. It started with a random call from my older brother, a guy I barely talked to since my wife's funeral. He lived 3 states away and usually only called on holidays or when something went wrong. So when his name popped up on my phone during work, my stomach tightened instantly. "Hey man," he said, voice awkward like we were strangers pretending to be family. "I heard you've been hanging out with some big-time CEO. Saw an article online. Thought you were living that mechanic life forever." Turns out someone from Sarah's company had posted pictures from a charity event we attended together, Lily smiling between us like a tiny celebrity. Seeing our life plastered online made me feel exposed, vulnerable, like strangers were suddenly part of our story. My brother didn't say anything cruel, but his tone carried that old judgment I remembered growing up, like my choices were always a little less impressive than everyone else's. When I hung up, doubts crept back in. Was I really ready for a life that public? For cameras and headlines and opinions from people who didn't know us? That same week Sarah got invited to a huge corporate gala celebrating her comeback after treatment. Big deal. Fancy guests. Media coverage. The kind of event where everything had to look perfect. She asked if I'd come with her, not as a fake husband this time, but as her real partner. Standing in front of my closet that night felt ridiculous. My best suit still looked like something borrowed compared to her elegant black dress. Lily kept hyping me up though, giving me a thumbs up and saying, "Daddy, you look like a movie hero." The gala was overwhelming. Flashing cameras. Fancy conversations about mergers and investments. People whispering when they saw us together, some supportive, some clearly skeptical. I could almost hear Patricia's voice in my head questioning whether I belonged there. Halfway through the night I started feeling that old insecurity creeping back, the urge to disappear before anyone noticed how out of place I felt. But then Sarah grabbed my hand in front of everyone and introduced me proudly during a speech. "This man stood beside me when I was at my weakest," she said, voice strong but emotional. "He reminded me that success means nothing without people who truly care." The room erupted in applause, and suddenly I didn't feel small anymore. Later that evening, though, a reporter asked a question that caught me off guard. "Daniel, how does it feel being pulled from an ordinary life into a high-profile relationship?" Ordinary life. The word stung more than I expected. On the drive home I stayed quiet, staring out the window at city lights blurring past. Sarah noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked gently. I hesitated, then admitted the truth. "Sometimes I worry I'm just extra baggage in your world. That eventually people will expect you to choose between your life and me." She pulled the car over and turned to face me. "You're not baggage," she said firmly. "You're my foundation. And if anyone ever makes you feel less than that, they don't deserve a place in my life." Hearing those words calmed something deep inside me. Because for the first time, I wasn't fighting the past alone. We were facing it together, hand in hand, ready for whatever challenge came next. Just when life started feeling stable, we got hit with another curveball that reminded me how fragile everything still was. It happened during one of Sarah's routine follow-up scans. We walked into the hospital together, same oncology wing where we first met, but this time things felt different. We weren't strangers pretending anymore. We were partners, walking side by side with real history behind us. Still, hospitals never stop feeling heavy. While we waited, Sarah tried acting calm, scrolling through emails like it was just another workday. But I could see the tension in her shoulders. Her fingers tapped against her phone non-stop, same nervous habit she had back when we first met. The scan took longer than expected. Way longer. And when the doctor finally called us into the room, his serious tone made my chest tighten instantly. "There's a small shadow we need to monitor," he said carefully. "It could be nothing, but we'll need additional tests to be sure." My brain went numb. Sarah stayed quiet, face unreadable, but I felt her hand squeeze mine under the table like she was holding on for dear life. Driving home was silent. No music. No jokes. Just the sound of tires against pavement and a million worst-case scenarios racing through my head. I kept remembering that first day we met, the fear, the uncertainty, the feeling that life could collapse at any second. That night Sarah tried acting tough again. Said she didn't want to overreact until we knew more. But when Lily went to bed and the apartment grew quiet, the cracks started showing. "I don't want to go through that darkness again," she admitted softly, sitting on the couch with her knees pulled up. I finally started feeling like myself, like I had a future. I sat beside her and wrapped my arm around her shoulders. "Whatever happens, you're not facing it alone," I said. "Not this time. Not ever." The next few days felt like torture. Waiting for test results, trying to stay positive for Lily, pretending everything was normal while fear lurked under every conversation. Lily noticed the tension though. Kids always do. One evening she handed Sarah a new drawing, bright colors, big smiling sun, 3 stick figures holding hands again. "This is our strong team," Lily said confidently. "We beat scary stuff together." Sarah hugged her tight, tears slipping down her cheeks. Finally, the call came. False alarm. The shadow turned out to be scar tissue from previous treatment, nothing dangerous. Hearing those words felt like someone lifted 1,000 pounds off my chest. Sarah cried openly this time, not from fear, but from relief and gratitude. That night we celebrated with takeout pizza on the living room floor, Lily dancing around like she'd just won a championship game. Sarah leaned against me laughing, her walls completely down, her eyes brighter than I'd ever seen them. And in that moment, I realized something huge. Life wasn't about waiting for problems to disappear. It was about choosing to love someone fully, even when the future felt uncertain. Because every scare, every hospital visit, every hard conversation, only made us stronger together. And honestly, I'd never felt more certain about where my heart belonged. After the false alarm, life felt different, calmer, deeper, like we'd crossed another storm together and came out stronger on the other side. Sarah threw herself back into work slowly, but this time she wasn't chasing success like it was oxygen. She set boundaries. Took breaks. Came home early to movie nights with Lily and messy dinners I still somehow managed to almost burn. One evening she invited me to another big company event, this one celebrating a massive project she'd been working on for years. The difference? I didn't feel like an outsider walking in anymore. I wasn't the fake husband or the guy tagging along awkwardly. I was her partner. And she made that clear to everyone we met. Halfway through the night Sarah pulled me onto the stage during her speech. I froze under the spotlight, heart pounding like a drum. She smiled at me, not the corporate smile, the real one. Success used to mean control, she told the room. But now, it means balance. And this man helped me find that. She squeezed my hand. He reminded me what real strength looks like, showing up when things get hard. Hearing those words in front of hundreds of people, man, it hit deep. Not because of applause or attention, but because I saw how proud she was of us, of what we built together. After the event we walked along the Chicago River, city lights reflecting off the water like tiny stars. The air was cool, quiet compared to the noise of the gala. Lily was staying with our neighbor for the night, so it was just the two of us, something we rarely got anymore. We sat on a bench watching boats drift by. Sarah rested her head on my shoulder, silent for a long time. Then she said something that stopped my heart for a second. "I used to think love was a distraction," she admitted. "Something that made people weak. But you showed me it's actually what makes us brave." I didn't know what to say at first. I'd spent years building walls after losing my wife, convincing myself that surviving was enough. That opening my heart again was too risky. But sitting there with her, watching how far we'd come from that cold hospital hallway, I realized something huge. I was scared to love again, I confessed quietly. Thought I'd lose everything if I let myself feel that deeply. But now, I'm more scared of life without you and Lily in it. She turned toward me, eyes shining under the city lights. No words for a moment, just understanding. And for the first time since my wife died, I allowed myself to imagine forever again. Not just surviving day to day, but building a future filled with laughter, chaos, arguments, growth, real life. When we got home later that night, Lily ran into our arms like we'd been gone for years instead of hours. She hugged both of us at once and said, "You guys look extra happy today." Sarah and I exchanged a glance, the kind where no explanation was needed. Because deep down, we both knew something had shifted. The fake beginning, the fear, the doubts, they were all behind us now. And standing there in that messy living room with a giggling kid between us, I realized this wasn't just a relationship anymore. It was a family. And I was finally ready to fight for it, no matter what came next. A few months after that night by the river, life finally settled into something that felt real. Not perfect, we still argued about dumb stuff like whose turn it was to cook or why Lily suddenly thought bedtime was optional, but it was ours. Messy, loud, and full of love. One Saturday morning I woke up to the smell of pancakes and chaos in the kitchen. Lily stood on a chair wearing one of my oversized hoodies like it was a dress, flipping pancakes that looked more like abstract art. Sarah leaned against the counter laughing, filming the whole disaster on her phone. "Yo, chef," I teased, rubbing my eyes. "You trying to poison us today?" Lily gasped dramatically. "Rude. These are gourmet." Sarah walked over and kissed my cheek. "Careful," she whispered. "She's sensitive about her cooking career." Moments like that hit different now. Months ago my world felt empty and gray, now it felt like a sitcom mixed with a drama series, unpredictable but alive. And for once, I wasn't just surviving. I was actually happy. Later that day we went to a small park near the lake. Nothing fancy, just a blanket, some snacks, and Lily running around chasing pigeons like they owed her money. Sarah sat beside me, fingers laced with mine, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. "You ever think about how crazy our story sounds?" she said suddenly. "Fake marriage, hospital drama, everything." I laughed. "Yeah. If someone pitched it as a movie I'd be like, nah, too wild. Nobody would believe it." She grew quiet for a moment, then pulled a small box out of her bag. My heart started racing immediately. "Relax," she said with a smirk. "It's not what you think, well, kinda." Inside the box were 2 simple silver rings. Not flashy. Not over the top. Just real. "I don't want fake promises anymore," she said softly. "No contracts, no pretending, just us choosing each other every day. For real this time." For a second I couldn't speak. My chest felt tight, not from fear, but from the weight of how far we'd come. I thought about the lonely guy sitting in that hospital corridor months ago, convinced life had nothing left to give him. And now here I was, being asked to build a future again. I took one of the rings and slid it onto her finger. "You already know my answer," I said, voice shaking a little. "I've been choosing you since the moment you let me see the real you, not the tough boss, not the walls, just Sarah." She smiled through tears and slipped the other ring onto my hand. Lily ran back toward us right then, out of breath and sweaty. "Why are you guys crying? Did the pigeons attack again?" We both laughed, pulling her into a tight hug. "No, kiddo," I said. "We're just celebrating something big." "What?" she asked. I looked at Sarah, then back at Lily. "Family," we said together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized something powerful. Our story didn't start with love, it started with survival, fear, and pretending. But somewhere along the way, we rewrote the ending ourselves. No more fake marriages. No more running from the past. Just 3 imperfect people choosing each other, every single day. And honestly, that felt like the real happy ending, the kind you fight for long after the credits should have rolled.